This programme is brought to you by Mass Marketing, fueling the future of L&D.
The number of learning and development professionals looking for work in the UK has risen sharply in 2025, with signs of pressure on vacancies, funding and job security across the sector. New analysis by recruiter Blue Eskimo combines data from the ONS, CIPD, PwC and others with insights from its own recruitment activity, and it's modelled what's really happening behind the scenes. To explore the findings and what they mean for L&D workers, I'm joined by Nick Jones from Blue Eskimo. Nick, thanks for coming on. A very warm welcome to you. You model and assess the jobs market in detail each year. What's raising questions for you? What are you seeing in the market at the moment?
There's two things that we're seeing that we felt needed a deeper dive. And there are two things that have happened that allow us to do that. One is there is more intelligence available out there at a deeper level. And two, we've got AI tools. And some of those AI tools are even more powerful. So, for example, ChatGPT agents or Grok 4, which can just take a much deeper dive. So the question we had for ourselves was, how can we take our data and the data that's out there about the general market, job market, and try and correlate that to the specifics in L&D? For us, we are definitely seeing trends that go further in a negative way than the general job trends in the UK, which by themselves are not good. They're not great, right? So what we wanted to do is answer a question really for ourselves. And that was, is there a bigger impact in learning and development? Are more people being made redundant? Are more people taking early exits from their careers without perhaps knowledge of the way the marketplace is running? Anecdotally, we felt that might be the case. And we wanted to go out and try and crunch some numbers to see as best we can where we are. And we hope that those numbers can be tested or queried by anyone, and maybe it'll get us to a better number, right?
Before we come on to the numbers, let's just talk about your method and just understand what you've done here. So you've used AI tools alongside data from CIPD, the ONS and others. How did you go about building your estimations and how should we interpret them?
We've created and we can share the prompts that we've used on multiple AI tools to do general research about the job market. So for example, the ONS delivers us stats around jobs in the UK, the number of redundancies in the UK, what the percentages are generally across a job function. What we wanted to do was try and take it a step further and model that against particular job types, i.e. learning and development. And in that is a set of assumptions and a set of probabilities. And we used AI to try and define what those probabilities are. So, for example, if 0.39% of people are made redundant per thousand, what is the probability for a learning and development professional with all of the other factors that combined, macroeconomics, AI, various other factors? What's the probability that it would be higher? And using different AI tools, we got to a number that we felt was relatively comfortable, possibly even too low. And essentially what we're talking about is double the number of redundancies. So a much higher redundancy rate in learning and development than in the general jobs market. And that is the kind of thing we set out to try and tease out. Whether it's factually correct or not, I don't know, but multiple AI tools, lots of research, plus our own data kind of tells us it is.
So Nick, take us through those headline numbers then. How many people are looking for work? How many vacancies are there and what's driving this?
There are different factors for the number of people that are open to work, right? So what we were trying to do is at the top line level, understand why are so many green badges for learning and development professionals appearing on LinkedIn. Is this a theme? Is it that we tend to be plugged into community groups that might have more exposure to, for example, redundancy? It was very clear to us as recruiters that no, it is a trend. It absolutely is happening. And we know that because anecdotally, we can tell you how many people we're talking to that are either finding themselves redundant or making their choice to make themselves redundant, voluntary redundancy, early exit, voluntary exit. And so what we wanted to do was take a stab at understanding what is the number of people that are being made redundant. What's the number of people that are, for example, ending fixed term contracts and then finding themselves open for work? And what's the number of people that are taking voluntary exits, however that's structured? And so, although the numbers won't be entirely accurate, they're good, solid estimates.
And what are those numbers, Nick?
From a redundancy perspective, the general trend in the UK on a redundancy basis would be 0.3% of roles get made redundant. Okay, now there are different figures, monthly figures, quarterly figures, and you can annualize. We wanted to get using probability to a number that would explain why it seems to be higher in learning and development. This is detailed in an article that we've done, and we were more than happy to share any data and information we have. We think it's at least 0.6, so double the probability that you'd be made redundant in learning and development for a load of different factors. And if that is the case, we need to know how many people are there in learning and development. So the first step was to define how many people are employed in learning and development in the UK.
And you've come to a number of around 40,000 there, I think, haven't you? Which I thought was a little on the low side.
40,000 is based on corporate learning and development jobs. So L&D practitioners in corporate entities, so business entities.
That's only a part of the market.
It excludes providers of learning services.
That could double or
easily, but that's an ecosystem that is essentially driven around the 40,000 corporate learning and development people, because those corporate learning and development people hold budgets which are then spent with external vendors. The reason why education is excluded is because it's a very large number. The percentage of redundancies in education are possibly higher, bizarrely, interestingly, and it skews the numbers.
And it's a different market. We're concerned with the workplace market here. And you've come through a number of around 2,500. So that could be conservative.
Yeah, I mean, I would estimate it probably is conservative. That 2,500 number is relatively easy to detail based on the assumptions of the number of redundancies, the number of voluntary exits, using ONS figures, using UK government stats and other stats. But it includes a large proportion of voluntary exits. Statistically, that's accurate, but the number of voluntary exits is difficult to predict. We're saying 2,500 based on 40,000 employed workers in learning and development. So when you look at it like that, it's a substantial number, right?
Around 1,000 vacancies. And now, correct me if I'm wrong, but that 1,000 vacancies covers both corporate and commercial, or is it just corporate as well?
That is a mixture of corporate and commercial. However, what's interesting about the vacancy numbers is that essentially what we're doing is we're looking at ONS statistics around the total number of vacancies available in the UK, which, by the way, is declining at a very rapid rate. And then what we're essentially doing is predicting the number of L&D related jobs that would form part of that cohort of jobs. That's a guess, but it's a guess that's got some probability to back it up. What it essentially shows, and it's the same for other job types, but it's arguably worse in certain functions, L&D being one of them, is that there are more job seekers than there are jobs. And the jobs that are being created are not being created at a fast enough pace to keep up with the number of exits. So effectively what that means is that until the market completely shifts and we see a bull run in L&D related activity and new jobs being created, we're probably going to see the same trajectory. And so I guess what we're trying to prove in this, or to open up in terms of discussion in this research, is where are the key pinch points? What are the things that we can do as candidates and companies to kind of rebalance that impact, Rob?
Let's come on to that. And are we seeing structural change here in how L&D roles are being shaped?
There is evidence. Philippa Hardman, for example, some of the work that Don Taylor and Ed Glare have been doing around the use of AI, but there is strong evidence, I think, that AI has already had a massive impact on learning and development. roles and jobs. That doesn't necessarily mean, and I'm not suggesting that AI has taken over the job of an L&D professional. We've got new tools that might make us more efficient. It's not that AI is supplanting those jobs. It's that AI is affecting those jobs because it's affecting the macroeconomic and microeconomic conditions of the corporate entities themselves. So just like in 2008, which we can draw parallels with, L&D is one of the first to get looked at. Marketing is one of the first to get looked at. HR is one of the first to get looked at, talent acquisition. These are functions which could easily be just trimmed, but because learning and development functions are relatively small functions, that trimming is quite substantial when it comes to jobs. I would argue AI upskilling is for everybody an absolute must. Absolute must, because you can be more productive. You can join conversations that we're not fully plugged into always in our corporate entities. And I do think that's one of the things that everybody needs to be doing, and certainly the advice that we give as recruiters. Rob,
can we drill into the specific L&D job roles that you're seeing greatest change in? Are there certain roles in development or sales or aspects across the function where you're seeing greatest change?
Yes, but for a multitude of different reasons. So instructional design and content development was the first to be affected, an obvious one. Everyone can understand why that might be affected, and the number of jobs may decrease. Large amount of spend on learning technology post-pandemic. That technology essentially is out of date in the generative AI age, or is being supplanted or enhanced by, and budgets are dropping. That's our data, that's CIPD data, and it's literally over the last couple of years. Everyone knows that L&D budgets are frozen or depleted, and that's not just L&D budgets, it's other budgets that affect L&D learner populations. So it was always going to be a rough ride, right? So it affects the obvious jobs that can have a AI enhancement. But what's interesting and disturbing is that a lot of the roles that we've seen that have been made redundant have been at the more senior end of the market, middle management and senior management.
Is it too early, Nick, to look at the roles that are being created and see what specific roles they might be?
This is anecdotal and I don't have real evidence, but I know that there will be some people that I know that there are many people that would agree. So it looks like in real life, or what we used to call face-to-face training, is definitely going to have a premium to it, because people are fatigued with the digital first, but we also understand that we've got budget constraints, learning needs to be delivered. So I would imagine that more high value in real life learning experiences will be a trend coming out of this, as will coaching, face-to-face coaching, real life coaching, because yes, we will have AI coaching. We've got an AI coach baked into ChatGPT and all the other tools, but the reality is that human first premium should still be there. Otherwise, we're all only going to be talking to computers.
Let's finish off, Nick. Let's try and think about, what might we say to learning and development professionals feeling unsettled or in transition? What practical steps, you're a recruiter, what practical steps should they take now to remain relevant and competitive?
This is essentially the advice that we would give to a candidate generally anyway. A lot of people that find themselves, if in learning and development, that find themselves looking in this market will find that it's a very different market, not in terms of the number of jobs or the types of jobs, but the job seeker experience. And I don't want to kind of go on about AI, but as an example, AI can review candidates coming through on applicant tracking systems in a corporate entity. In some instances, it's already happening. That means that sometimes the experience of applying for a job will result in an immediate rejection without the knowledge that actually a learning and development savvy person, human being, has not read your CV. And that can be a shock to some people. On the flip side, what AI can also do is write resumes, write cover letters. It can even make applications for people. So we're starting to see that. We're starting to see automation of the application process, meaning lots and lots of people are applying for jobs that possibly they haven't actually really decided on applying for, thought out reasons, creating a kind of clogging of the system, meaning that the candidate experience is difficult. And there are steps. We've created a whole download article of steps and tips that you can use as a candidate to get through, and that make your experience a little bit easier. And on the client side, benchmarking roles has been a real challenge, because just the fact that so many of these roles overlap, there are grey areas. So we've tried to break out what those roles and role families are and assign a kind of full and real benchmark to those salaries and skills using AI over 1,000 data points. So, I think we're pretty well placed to do that. So we're trying to offer advice and support on both fronts. It's choppy waters, but for a lot of people, Rob, there's either oblivious to it, it hasn't connected them, it hasn't happened in their life. It could be the case that it does, and I would prepare myself for that, but equally it could easily just balance out before it affects someone.
I really appreciate you taking the time to share all these fabulous insights. It's the first time we've had something quite like this on this level of detail on job redundancies, which we don't normally report on in quite this way. So that's been a fascinating dive, Nick, to chat to you about this. The research, I believe, is going to be added to your website, so folks can come on and get that there. We'll include a link in the program notes for today. Nick, really appreciate your time and hope to see you back on here again soon.
Thanks, Rob.
This program is brought to you by Mass Marketing, fueling the future of L&D.